The desert was quiet that afternoon, quiet enough that a man could hear the dust settling. Matthew Cross, 23, guided his mare along the narrow trail, his hat pulled low against the wind. The sun hung pale and cold over the Arizona plains, the air sharp with sand. He'd been hauling sacks of flour and salt toward the abandoned Carson Ranch, 3 days' ride from town, when he saw the smoke. It wasn't the kind that curled lazy from a campfire. This was black, bitter, rising straight into the sky like something cursed. He nudged the mare forward, boots clicking against the stirrups, one hand brushing the worn grip of the Colt on his belt. The wagon lay twisted among the rocks. Horses gone. One wheel snapped. And there, half hidden beneath scorched canvas, lay a woman. She was tall, even slumped against the ground, built like she'd been carved from the canyon itself. Long black hair tangled with ash. Bare arms streaked with dry blood and soot. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. When she stirred, her eyes opened, dark, hard, and alive with warning. She rasped, "You ride alone, white man?" Matthew froze. "Ah, yes." "Then keep riding." Her fingers clenched around a broken knife, knuckles white, but her body betrayed her strength. She was shaking, feverish, skin glistening with sweat. "I can't just leave you," he said softly. "You can," she hissed. "And you will." He dropped to one knee anyway. "You're hurt." "I've been worse." When she tried to stand, she swayed. The knife slipped from her grip. Matthew caught her before she fell, feeling the raw heat of her skin through his shirt. She didn't thank him, didn't speak again, just glared as he lifted her into the saddle and turned toward the canyon cabin 3 miles off, the one he'd built for bad winters. He rode hard, the storm chasing them. Thunder cracked behind the hills. By the time he carried her inside, the rain had begun, slicing against the tin roof like nails. She slept through most of the night. He cleaned the wounds, burns along her arm, a deep cut near her ribs, and wrapped them tight with what cloth he had. Every time he touched her, she flinched like a wild thing. When she woke near dawn, the fire was dying low. She sat up slow, studying him. Her voice came rough. "You speak Apache?" "No, ma'am." "Good." She leaned back, eyes half closed. "Then you'll keep your mouth shut." He smiled a little, trying for calm. "I don't mean you harm." "You already have," she said. "You made me owe you." By the time the rain stopped, the cabin smelled of smoke, leather, and the damp wool of Matthew's coat. He poured her a tin cup of water, careful not to meet her eyes too long. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ilana." "That Apache?" She nodded once. "It means lightning. But you can't say it right." He took that as fair warning. They sat in uneasy silence. The wind pressed against the shutters, and somewhere outside, coyotes yipped in the dark. Matthew tried to find words, but nothing felt safe. She stared at him like she could see every fear he'd ever had. "You're a rancher," she said finally. "Yes, ma'am." "Married?" He shook his head. She tilted her head, curious, cruel. "Virgin." He felt his face burn. "That's none of your business." Ilana laughed, low and raw. "I thought so." She took a sip of water, eyes glinting in the firelight. "I haven't had sex in 5 months." The words hit the air like a shot. Matthew froze. He couldn't tell if she was teasing him or testing him. She said it with no shame, no invitation, just the blunt honesty of someone who'd stopped pretending the world was gentle. He stood up fast, knocking over the chair. "Lady, you don't." "You blush easy," she said. "Like a boy." "I'm not." He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "You should rest." He stepped outside into the rain-washed night, breathing hard, the desert air biting cold against his skin. Her laughter followed him, soft but heavy, like she'd carved her power back out of the dark. Inside, Ilana watched the door close. For the first time since her village burned, she felt a flicker of something she couldn't name. Safety, maybe, or pity. She hated both. When he came back in, soaked and silent, she said nothing more. He lit another log, and the cabin filled with quiet warmth. Neither slept much. Just before dawn, she whispered, "Why'd you help me?" He hesitated. Because you looked like you didn't want to die. Her eyes softened for a moment. No one ever does. They just get tired of fighting. The knock came before sunrise. 3 raps against the cabin door, slow, certain. Matthew's blood turned cold. He reached for his coat. Ilana was already awake, knife in hand, eyes narrowed. The voice outside was low and mean. "Morning, friend. You seen an Apache woman pass this way." Matthew glanced toward the floorboards. Ilana had already slid beneath them. Quick as a shadow, the boards were placed by her bare hands. He cracked the door. 3 men stood outside, dusty armed, the smell of whiskey heavy on their coats. "Bounty hunters." "Can't say I have," Matthew said. "You sure?" The lead man smiled without warmth. "Word is she's wanted. Killed a cavalry sergeant. $500 worth of wanted. I ain't seen her." The man stepped inside without asking. His boots thudded against the wood. His eyes roamed the cabin, landing on the blood-stained bandage on the table. "You patching someone up, boy?" Matthew's heart slammed. "Cut myself." "That's so." The man moved closer. Funny smell. Indian salve. Matthew's thumb brushed the hammer of his coat. "You've done enough sniffing. Time to move on." The bounty hunter grinned, hand drifting to his gun. "I don't take kindly to orders from children." The sound came fast. A creak, a breath, then thunder. Ilana erupted from the floorboards, knife flashing. She caught the first man in the thigh, twisting him down with brutal precision. Matthew fired at the second before he could draw. The gunshot split the air, sending smoke rolling across the room. The third bolted for the door. Ilana hurled the knife, catching him between the shoulders. Silence followed, broken only by the drip of blood onto the boards. Matthew stood shaking, his pistol still raised. The smell of powder and death filled the cabin. He'd never killed a man before. Ilana rose slowly, breathing hard. Her eyes met his. Not cold now, but something else. Respect, maybe, or sorrow. "They have killed us both," she said. He nodded, unable to speak. Together they dragged the bodies outside, burying them beneath a wash of wet sand before the sun rose. The sky turned a dull silver, the air heavy with the coming heat. When they finished, Matthew sat against the fence, hands trembling. "You didn't tell me men were hunting you." "I didn't think you'd help if I did." He laughed once, bitter. "You're right." Ilana leaned on the post beside him, the first light catching the scars on her face. "I killed that sergeant. He burned my village, took my sister. I cut his throat in front of his men." Matthew looked up. "Where's your sister now?" "They took her east. Sold her, maybe. I'm going after her." He stared at the horizon, the long stretch of red dust and promise. "You'll die out there alone." "I've died before." He stood, meeting her gaze. "Then I'll go with you." Ilana studied him for a long time, as if weighing his worth. "You'd leave your land?" "I reckon it's not much of a home if it's empty." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and gun smoke. Somewhere beyond the hills, a hawk cried. She nodded once. "Then ride with me, rancher, but don't slow me down." He smiled faintly. "Wouldn't dream of it." They saddled up under a bruised sky. 2 figures cut against a rising light. One tall and fierce, the other young and uncertain, both bound by something neither could yet name. When they rode out, the desert swallowed their trail. Behind them, the cabin stood quiet again, ghosts buried under its floor. And for the first time in years, Matthew Cross felt a strange, frightening pull of destiny. The morning after they buried the bodies, the desert stretched endless before them. Pale hills rolling into haze, wind sighing through the mesquite. Matthew Cross, 23, rode behind Ilana, 26, keeping his distance. She didn't talk much. When she did, her voice carried the weight of someone who'd learned silence the hard way. By noon, the sun was a white coin overhead. They stopped near a dry creek bed. Ilana slid from her saddle, moving with the calm of someone who knew every trick the land could play. Matthew dismounted, boots crunching over gravel. "We'll rest an hour," she said. "Your horse limps." He checked the hoof. Stone bruise. She crouched beside him. took the animal's leg, and worked the rock free with a flint knife. Her hands were steady, sure. When she looked up, sweat glistened along her temples. You don't last long out here without learning to fix things yourself. Matthew smiled faintly. Guess I'm learning. You learn slow, she replied, but her tone softened. They shared what food they had: dried meat, stale bread. The air shimmered with heat. A hawk circled high above, patient and silent. That night they camped by a dry wash. The fire crackled low. Matthew couldn't sleep. The memory of the gunfight replayed in his mind. Ilana sat across from him, cleaning her blade, her face lit in orange. You've killed now, she said, not asking. He nodded, eyes on the flames. Didn't mean to. No one means to, she said. But meaning doesn't matter. He looked at her, puzzled. You sound like you've done it too many times. Her gaze lifted to the stars. Enough to know killing's not what haunts a person. It's what comes after. The fire popped. Neither spoke again. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed of thunder and smoke and of her eyes watching him from the dark. They rode at dawn. The desert was cruel that day. Hot wind, no shade. Flies swarmed around them. By afternoon, Matthew's vision blurred. He slumped in the saddle. Ilana turned, saw him weaving. You fall, you die, she snapped. He didn't answer. The world tilted. Then blackness. When he woke, he was under a crude lean-to of branches, Ilana's shadow moving nearby. She poured water on a cloth and pressed it to his lips. You fainted, she said. He tried to sit up. Where'd you? Found a spring, she said. You're lucky. Most men don't get back up. He stared at her, realizing she'd carried him. Her arms and hands were streaked with dirt, her hair plastered with sweat. Thank you, he whispered. Ilana shrugged. Can't have you dying before we reach the town. They reached the edge of a canyon 3 days later. The sun had been gone since morning, swallowed by thick gray clouds. The air felt heavy. Ilana studied the dark horizon. Storm's coming. Fast. Matthew followed her gaze. The wind had turned cold, carrying the smell of rain. Maybe we should wait it out, he said. She shook her head. If we stop, we lose time. My sister's getting farther every day. He wanted to argue, but didn't. They urged their horses down the canyon trail, the walls rising on both sides like prison bars. The first drops came slow, fat and warm. Then the sky cracked open. Rain poured in sheets. The canyon floor turned to mud. They pressed forward until the river ahead began to roar. Ilana's horse reared, sensing danger. She shouted, pulling hard on the reins. Matthew saw it too, the water swelling fast, turning brown and violent. Back, she yelled. Before they could climb higher, the flood hit, a wall of water, churning with branches and stone. The force ripped Matthew from his saddle. He went under, the current dragging him like a rag doll. He gasped, swallowing mud, clawing for anything solid. Ilana, he shouted, voice lost of thunder. Through the chaos, he glimpsed her diving after him. Her hand caught his arm, and she hauled him toward the canyon wall. The current slammed them both against rock. She pushed him up onto a narrow ledge, coughing, shaking. He turned, choking. You saved me again. She didn't answer. Her leg was bleeding from a gash. The water rose another foot. He tore off his belt, tied it around her thigh, and held her steady until the flood began to ease. The storm moved east by dusk, leaving behind wreckage and silence. They found a small cave above the waterline. Inside, the air was damp and cool. Matthew built a weak fire from driftwood. Ilana sat with her back to wall, eyes half closed. You're bleeding bad, he said. I've had worse, she murmured. He knelt, cleaning the wound. She hissed, biting back pain. Hold still. You talk too much, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. When he finished, she met his gaze. You risked yourself in that water. Why? He hesitated. Because you have done the same. Her lips curved faintly. Don't pretend to know me, rancher. I'm trying to. They sat in silence after that, rain dripping from the cave mouth. Outside, Lightning flickered over the canyon, painting her face in pale fire. For the first time, Matthew saw not a warrior but a woman, tired, scarred, human. Later, as the fire died, she spoke softly. My people used to say the river remembers every soul that crosses it. If it drags you under, it's because you still owe it something. He looked at her. What do you owe it? She closed her eyes. Too much. The storm left the world washed clean. By the third day, they reached a frontier town called Dry Bend, a scatter of shacks, a church, a saloon leaning like it was tired of standing. Matthew's shoulders still ached from the flood. Ilana limped beside him, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. Her knife stayed hidden beneath it. Keep your head down, he warned. Plenty here don't take kindly to your kind. I've noticed, she said dryly. They entered the trading post, a cramped space smelling of tobacco and wet leather. A few soldiers stood by the counter, laughing. The shopkeeper, a thin man with red whiskers, looked up as they entered. His smile faltered when he saw her. Matthew stepped forward. Need food, ammo, and a map east. The man nodded slowly, eyes flicking toward Ilana. That woman with you? She's with me? Apache? Matthew's voice hardened. She's human. The shopkeeper forced a smile. Didn't mean no insult. He turned, reaching for supplies. But his hand trembled. Ilana noticed. Her instincts tightened. We should leave, she whispered. Just a few more minutes, Matthew said. Then the back door slammed open. A soldier stepped in, his gaze sharp. Hold it. Another followed. That her? The shopkeeper's voice cracked. I had to tell, sir. There's bounty money. 500. He never finished. Ilana threw the knife before he could blink. It buried itself in the wall beside his head, missing by inches. Run, she hissed. The soldiers drew pistols. Matthew grabbed her arm and dove for the window. Glass shattered. They hit the dirt outside as bullets ripped through the wall. Horses screamed. Shouts rang out. The air filled with gun smoke and dust. Matthew fired twice, covering her as she limped toward the stables. One soldier dropped. Another fired back, grazing Matthew's shoulder. Go, he yelled. Ilana swung into the saddle, reached down, and pulled him up behind her. The horse bolted through the alley, hooves striking sparks. Bullets chased them down the main street. They burst into open desert, the town shrinking behind them. Wind tore through their hair. Matthew clung to her waist, blood soaking his sleeve. When they finally stopped miles later, night had fallen. They hid in a shallow cave, both breathing hard. Matthew's wound bled freely. Let me see, Ilana said. I'm fine. Don't be stupid. She tore a strip from her blanket, pressed it to the wound. You're lucky it missed bone. He managed a smile. Guess luck's all I've got. She looked at him for a long moment. You shouldn't have stayed in that shop. I wasn't going to leave you. Ilana sat back, her eyes unreadable. You're a fool, Matthew Cross. Maybe, but I'm your fool now. She stared into the darkness, lips tightening, part anger, part something softer. They rested in silence. The desert wind howled outside, carrying the far-off cry of coyotes. The moonlight slipped through the cave mouth, silvering the edges of her face. Finally, she spoke. Back there you killed again. He swallowed. I didn't count. You should, she said. The dead deserve that. He nodded slowly. Then I'll start with the ones I killed protecting you. Ilana turned toward him. Why protect me? He met her gaze. Because no one else will. For a moment, neither looked away. Something passed between them, unspoken, dangerous. She broke it first, whispering, You'll regret that. Maybe, but not tonight. The fire burned low. Her shadow stretched long against the stone. She lay down near the entrance, her rifle across her chest, eyes half open. Matthew watched her until sleep took him. Before dawn, he woke the sound of her voice, quiet, almost a prayer. Sister, wait for me. I'm coming. He said nothing, just listened. Outside, the sky turned pale, and the wind carried the first light of morning. The morning came gray and cold. the kind that crept into a man's bones and made him question his own strength. Nathan woke before dawn, breath fogging in the dim light, the fire's last embers flickering low. He turned toward the woman sleeping beside it. Taya, the Apache sister, the one who had walked barefoot through hell and somehow still carried the dignity of a queen. She wasn't asleep, not really. Her eyes were open, fixed on the horizon beyond the tent flap. She had that same quiet stillness she always wore before trouble, like a hawk watching something only it could see. Her long hair was unbraided, her shoulders bare where the blanket had slipped. Scars caught the faint light, proof of the life she'd survived. "You're awake," Nathan murmured. "I never sleep when the wind shifts like that," she said softly. "It brings whispers." Nathan frowned. "Whispers?" "Men," she replied, her tone hardening. "They're close." He sat up fast, reaching for his rifle. Through the thin canvas, he could hear it too now. The faint jingle of spurs, the rhythm of hooves in the dry grass. 6, maybe 7 riders, moving slow. Not Apache. He could tell by the cadence. White men, armed men. Taya rose, pulling her tunic on, eyes locked on the trail. "They followed us." "They?" Nathan asked. "Your kind," she said. "The ones who think land and women can both be owned." Nathan's jaw clenched. He'd known they weren't done running. The bounty out on them, was too high. The railroad company wanted her dead for what her tribe had done near Clifton. And now, with him helping her escape, he was branded a traitor. He grabbed the saddlebag, slung it over his shoulder. "We move. Now." She didn't argue. They'd stopped arguing days ago. Only survival mattered now. The two stepped out into the dawn. The sky was the color of worn steel, the plains wide and empty. A hawk cried overhead. In the distance, riders were dots moving fast through the dust. 7, maybe 8 now. Closer. Nathan and Taya sprinted for the horses tied near the creek bed. The mare whinnied, sensing the urgency. Nathan swung into the saddle, extending a hand for Taya. She gripped his wrist and mounted behind him with practiced ease. Her arms wrapped around his waist, strong and steady. "Ride north," she said. "The canyon bends there. They can't follow without crossing open rock." He nodded and kicked the mare forward. The horse lunged ahead, dirt flying. Bullets cracked behind them, sharp, echoing reports that sliced through the morning air. One whizzed past Nathan's shoulder. Another tore through the horse's mane. Taya twisted around, firing back. She didn't miss. A rider screamed and tumbled from his saddle, dust swallowing him whole. The chase stretched on for miles, gunfire and grit blending into the rhythm of hooves. Nathan's breath came ragged, his hat lost to the wind. The canyon finally appeared ahead, a narrow split of stone and scrub that rose like the jaws of some ancient beast. They plunged into it. Echoes swallowed sound. The walls climbed high on either side, cutting off light. Nathan pulled hard on the reins, slowing the horse. "We'll have to climb from here," he said. "The path's too narrow." Taya dismounted, eyes scanning the terrain. "They'll find us before nightfall." "Then we make our stand here," Nathan said. Taya's gaze met his. "You would die for me, rancher?" He hesitated. "No," he said quietly. "But I won't let them kill what's right." The wind stirred between them. She looked away first, jaw tight, emotion flickering behind her eyes. "Then let's make them earn every step." They set traps through the canyon, small, simple snares, rocks perched to roll, rifle positions chosen with precision. Nathan felt his heartbeat settle into something sharp and calm. Every breath felt like purpose. Every glance toward her reminded him what he was fighting for, not just her life, but the idea that someone like her deserved to exist free. By late afternoon, they heard the first voices echoing to the canyon walls. "Spread out. She's here somewhere." Nathan chambered around. Taya crouched beside him, bow in hand, the painted marks on her face faint but visible now. "Whatever happens," he said, "don't stop moving." She gave a faint smile. "You talk too much, white boy." Then the first man appeared. Nathan fired. The echo roared like thunder. Another shot followed, Taya's arrow this time. 2 men fell. More shouts, more gunfire. The canyon turned into chaos. Dust screams, stone chips flying from ricochets. Nathan ducked behind a boulder, returning fire. He caught sight of 1 man, reloading too slow, shot him clean through the shoulder. Taya moved like a ghost, silent and swift, her arrows cutting through the dust. But there were too many. A bullet grazed her leg. She stumbled, bit back a cry. Nathan pulled her behind cover, hands slick with blood. "They're closing in," she hissed. He looked around. No escape, no more cover. Just a steep ridge above them. "Climb," he said. "I'll hold them." No, her tone was iron. "We climb together or die together." The sound of boots crunching rock grew closer. Nathan nodded once. Then, together, they began to climb, fingers scraping stone, bullets sparking off the rock near their feet. Nathan felt one sear his arm. He grunted, kept climbing. Taya reached the ledge first, turned, and fired her last arrow downward. A scream echoed, followed by silence. They collapsed side by side at the top of the ridge, chests heaving, the world spinning below them. The canyon stretched out like a scar. Smoke rose from the lower path where the dead lay. Nathan looked at her leg, blood soaking through her tunic. "We need to stop the bleeding." She laughed weakly. "It's not the first time I've bled for a white man's fight." He tore his shirt, wrapped her wound tight. "You're bleeding for your own freedom now." She looked at him then, really looked. "And you, rancher? What are you bleeding for?" He paused. "Maybe for something I should have believed in long ago." Night fell slow and solemn. They found a small cave near the ridge, hidden by brush. Nathan built a fire, his hands trembling from exhaustion. Taya sat opposite, leg bound, her face ghost-lit by the flames. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence between them felt sacred. Then, softly, she broke it. "When I told you I hadn't had a man in 5 months," she said, voice low, "you looked at me like I'd spoken a curse." Nathan met her gaze. I didn't know what to say. "You thought it shameful," she continued, "or maybe strange. But it wasn't about lust. It was about choice. My people were scattered, my brother gone. The world took everything from me. My body was the last thing that was mine." He looked down, fingers tracing the rifle's wood. "I don't think it's shameful. I think it's brave." Her eyes softened. "And you? Still a virgin?" He smiled faintly. "Still." "Why?" He shrugged. "Never found someone worth the cost." The fire crackled between them, warm and slow. Outside, the wind whispered over the canyon rim. She leaned closer, studying him. "You think saving me makes you different from them?" "No," he said. "Just human." She exhaled through her nose, as if testing that word. "Human." The sound of distant hoofbeats carried up the ridge. Faint but real. Nathan's expression hardened. "They're regrouping." Taya nodded. "Then this ends tonight." They doused the fire, moved to the ridge edge. Moonlight silvered the rocks. Down below, torches glimmered, tiny orange dots moving like ghosts to the canyon floor. Nathan counted 7 again. He lifted his rifle. "I'll draw them into the open. You circle behind." "No," she interrupted. "You run. They want me. If I go down there, it ends." He turned on her sharply. "I'm not letting you die." "You can't stop it," she said, voice calm. "But you can live to tell what you saw. Tell them the truth. Tell them she wasn't savage. Tell them she fought like the wind." He shook his head, chest tight. "Taya." Her hand came up, touching his cheek. "Don't waste it, rancher." Then she was gone, slipping down the ridge like a shadow, silent and sure to spite her wound. Nathan wanted to follow, but something in her eyes had held him still. The same quiet fire that made men stop and listen. He watched as she stepped into the moonlight below, bow drawn, hair wild in the wind. The riders saw her and shouted, guns flashing. She fired first. 1 man fell. Then another. The third got close enough to shoot back. Nathan shouted, fire from above. 1 shot hit. Another missed. It was chaos again. Smoke, shouting, dust rising like ghosts in the earth. He saw her fall once, then rise again, blood dark on her arm. The last man came at her with a knife. She met him head-on, no hesitation. The blade flashed. Then silence. Nathan ran down the ridge, heart pounding. When he reached her, she was on her knees beside the last man's body. Blood stained her side, but her eyes were steady. "It's done," she whispered. He caught her before she fell. The dawn came slow, painting the horizon in muted silver. Taya's breathing was shallow, her pulse faint. She looked up at him, lips trembling into a small smile. "Now you know," she said weakly. "Even broken things can fight back." Nathan's throat tightened. "Don't talk. You'll be all right." She touched his chest lightly. "You're a good man, Nathan. Don't let this land turn you hard." Then she went still. He held her for a long time, the wind whispering through the canyon. Later, when the sun rose full, he buried her beneath a lone cedar tree overlooking the plains. He carved her name into a stone, Tiwai, free woman of the wind. He stood there, hat in hand, the silence heavy but peaceful. Then, quietly, he spoke the last words she'd left him with. "Even broken things can fight back." As he rode away, dust trailing behind him, the land stretched endless and unforgiving. But somehow, it didn't feel empty anymore, because somewhere out there, in the whisper of the wind, her spirit still rode. And for the first time in his life, Nathan felt whole,